Don't be dramatic. My aunt's voice crackled through the phone, lined with a sweetness that felt rehearsed. Thanksgiving's cancelled this year. Too tight, just staying in. You understand, right? Behind her, my cousin's laugh spilled out, sharp, careless. Tell her it's family only this time. And just like that, the air in my apartment went cold. Holidays don't cancel. They fracture. I tried to tell myself I was fine. I told myself solitude could be holy. But the silence pressed its palm against my chest until I could barely breathe. If this ever happened to you, say same in the comments. Hi everyone, my name is Celine Marlowe, and I was 29 when I learned the cruelest betrayals don't arrive with slammed doors, but with polite excuses and careful lies. By day, I work at a non-profit office that funnels grants into food kitchens and after-school programs, the kind of place where you witness quiet dignity in people holding cardboard boxes of groceries. I've always believed family was the same, small acts that keep you alive. So when the family chat dimmed into silence, when mom forgot to send details, when aunt's words slid across me like oil, I clung to excuses. I told myself they loved me. I told myself it was fine. That morning, I still set my table for one. One plate. One fork polished until it gleamed like I had company. In my oven, a single chicken breast browned too fast, pretending to be a turkey. I carved it anyway. The knife's clink on the porcelain was a sound too sharp for a room so empty. Outside, city windows glowed like storybooks, other families moving across silhouettes, their laughter leaking faintly into the night air. I muted my phone after scrolling through strangers' pie photos. I washed my dish slowly, like extending a ritual so it wouldn't vanish too soon. By 7, darkness had smothered the street. I thought I had survived it, the loneliness, the charade of strength. Until the notification pinged. My cousin had posted a video. I tapped. The sound hit first, glasses clinking, voices chanting to family. Then the frame widened, my mother at the head of the table, my aunt carving a golden turkey, every cousin, every uncle, every niece. The mantle was crowded with the same place cards I had lettered last year. Caption, family only. And in the mirror behind them, I caught it, an empty chair with a folded card tucked beneath the charger. My name, hidden like a secret they were too cowardly to throw away. I froze with the phone still in my hand, the video looping like a cruel joke. My family's voices poured through the tiny speaker, louder than the walls of my apartment could hold. Laughter. Forks scraping. Someone saying, "Pass the cranberry sauce to Celine's seat, oh wait," followed by roaring laughter. I hit pause. My reflection in the black screen looked unfamiliar, eyes wide, mouth set in a line so thin it could have snapped. The betrayal wasn't just the dinner. It was the lie. The careful planning. The whispered texts that excluded me. I replayed moments from weeks before, mom changing the subject whenever I mentioned Thanksgiving, my cousin's smirk when I asked about dessert. Suddenly every silence, every half-smile, every dismissive shrug clicked together like jagged puzzle pieces forming one ugly picture. They never wanted me there. I stared at the empty chair in that video until the edges blurred. My name card wasn't gone, it was folded and hidden, proof that I had been erased deliberately, yet still tethered to the memory of belonging. That small cruelty cut deeper than if they had torn it in half. The rest of the night, I wandered my apartment like a ghost in my own skin. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Instead, I opened cabinets, rearranged dishes, straightened shelves. My hands needed to move because my heart couldn't. At midnight, I sat cross-legged on the floor with my laptop, the glow spilling across my face. I typed my name into search bars, aimlessly, Facebook, LinkedIn, the nonprofit's website. As if seeing myself reflected somewhere could anchor me back into existence. But it didn't work. And then, a thought lodged itself, quiet but sharp. If they want me invisible, I'll show them what invisibility can do. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling not from weakness, but from the start of something else. Something they wouldn't see coming. Because I realized, being left out wasn't the end. It was the opening scene. The next morning, sunlight cut through my blinds like thin blades, and I woke with the heaviness of a hangover, though I hadn't touched a drop. My phone buzzed relentlessly. More videos, more pictures. My cousin's feed was flooded. Selfies with plates piled high, kids wearing paper crowns, even a shot of my mother holding the carving knife like royalty. Not one message. Not one call. I brewed coffee, hands steady but heart pounding. As the dark liquid filled the cup, I stared into it like a mirror and whispered to myself, "You're not crazy. They did this on purpose." By noon, my resolve sharpened. If my family wanted me erased, then I would rewrite myself elsewhere, and make sure they saw the ink. I pulled out the old binder of receipts and notes I kept for my nonprofit projects. Grants I'd written. Events I'd saved when others abandoned them. Photographs of food drives, shelters lit with fairy lights at Christmas, names of children who hugged me just because I gave them pencils and books. This was proof that while my family carved turkeys, I had carved hope out of nothing. Proof that my existence was more than a seat at their table. But revenge, real revenge, couldn't be loud and messy. It had to be subtle. Surgical. It had to slice clean. I remembered my cousin bragging last summer about applying for a city grant to expand his catering business. He'd mocked me at the barbecue. "You shuffle papers, Celine. I make real money." Everyone had laughed. But I knew things he didn't. I knew the process. I knew the panel. And I knew his application had flaws. Ones that I could highlight, quietly, anonymously, without ever leaving fingerprints. I sipped my coffee, tasting not bitterness but clarity. They had chosen to leave me hungry. But hunger can be power. Hunger makes you precise. Hunger makes you dangerous. I folded the binder shut, slid it into my bag, and whispered into the empty room, "Family only, right? Let's see how family feels when the feast is gone." The Monday after Thanksgiving, I walked into the city building where grant reviews took place. The air smelled like old paper and polished floors, a mixture I'd grown used to over the years. My badge still worked, of course it did. I had built trust here, quietly, consistently. I signed in with a polite smile, the kind that hides storms. No one questioned me. Why would they? I was the woman who kept programs running when deadlines loomed. The invisible glue in a building full of egos. Down the hall, the grant committee room buzzed with chatter. Piles of applications lay in neat stacks, each one waiting for scrutiny. I spotted my cousin's logo instantly, his catering business, all glossy images of smoked meats and staged banquets. He had poured money into design but nothing into substance. My fingers brushed the folder, lingering on the embossed lettering. I remembered his smirk, his careless cruelty, the way he filmed that turkey like it was a crown jewel. My jaw tightened. But revenge couldn't be fueled by rage alone. It needed precision. So I slipped into the reviewer's seat, my notes already prepped. No lies, no exaggerations, just the truth he had tried to skip over. Missing documentation. Inflated revenue claims. Zero evidence of community impact. In a world of grants, those weren't small mistakes. They were death sentences. Each correction I made was a stitch, tightening a seam he'd left loose. My pen carved silently, line after line, until his proposal looked less like a dream and more like the hollow boast it truly was. When I finished, I leaned back and let out a slow breath. It wasn't anger now, it was clarity, cold and clean. Walking out, the December air slapped my face sharp and real. For the first time since that cursed video, I didn't feel invisible. I felt deliberate. That night, as I sat in my apartment with the city lights blinking outside, I imagined my cousin waiting for approval letters, bragging to the family about his inevitable win. And I smiled, knowing that sometimes the sharpest knives don't carve turkeys. They cut illusions. The first ripple hit a week later. My aunt posted in the family group chat, a group I hadn't been invited back to, but screenshots always found their way to me. "Everyone, pray for Daniel's catering business," she wrote. "Some problem with his grant paperwork. Can you believe it?" A chorus of digital sympathy followed. Sad face emojis. Half-hearted prayers. Promises of it'll work out, cause. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew I had already seen the cracks months before he filed. All I did was hold up a mirror. At work, the whispers began. "Did you see the applicant that tanked? Overinflated numbers. Total rookie mistake." My colleagues shook their heads, chuckled. Grants were competitive, and sloppiness didn't survive. No one mentioned my cousin's name, but I didn't need them to. I could hear it echoing behind every line. That Friday, I walked past his restaurant. The windows were dressed in twinkle lights, but the place was nearly empty. He stood behind the counter, jaw tight, phone glued to his ear, his hands moving in angry slices. I didn't go in. I just watched from across the street as the man who had laughed at my loneliness now stood in his own. But revenge, I realized, isn't just about one fall. It's about what comes after, the silence when you expect applause, the cold when you thought you'd be warm. And for me, it was about finally stepping into a space where I wasn't begging for a chair. That night, I opened my email and saw the approval for a community grant I had been chasing for months. Funds to renovate a local shelter's kitchen. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my cousin's catering dreams crumbled, I was about to feed hundreds. I closed my laptop slowly, the glow fading across my face. The universe has a way of answering wounds, not with thunder, but with balance. And yet, I knew this wasn't the end. My family still hadn't faced me. They still thought I was on the outside, silent and blind. But silence was my weapon now. Winter deepened, and with it, the distance between me and my family. They never called, never explained, never apologized. But through the cracks, I caught glimpses, screenshots, whispers, photos I shouldn't have seen. My cousin's restaurant, once full of buzz, was struggling. His grand expansion had been the talk of Thanksgiving, but now suppliers were demanding advance payments. Customers trickled instead of flooded. He had no safety net, no cushion. The grant had been his lifeline, and I had cut it, clean, invisible. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, what settled over me was quieter. Not joy. Not guilt. Something steadier, justice. One Saturday afternoon, as snow hissed against my windows, my phone rang. My mother. I let it buzz until her voice filled the voicemail. "Celine," she began, too formal, too careful. "You know your cousin is going through a tough time. Maybe you could, I don't know, offer him some guidance? You understand this stuff better than anyone. We're family. We have to look out for each other." I laughed, a sound so sharp it startled me. Family. Now I was family? I didn't call her back. Instead, I replayed her words, every syllable dripping with irony. They had carved me out of their holiday, folded my name away like a scrap, and now that their golden boy was flailing, suddenly I was useful again. But I had learned something from that empty Thanksgiving table. Usefulness is not the same as love. So I stayed silent. I worked late nights at the shelter, overseeing the renovation of their kitchen, watching fresh tiles gleam where rot had been. The first meal we served, steaming bowls of stew, bread warm from the oven, was shared among people who didn't care about last names or family titles. They cared about kindness. About survival. And as I carried trays out to those who needed them, I realized, this was my family now. Built not by blood, but by choice. Still, deep inside, I knew one truth. They would come knocking again. And next time, I wouldn't just be silent. I'd be ready. It came on Christmas Eve. The kind of night when the city glowed with string lights and strangers carried bags stuffed with gifts. My doorbell rang, sharp and insistent, cutting through the carols outside. When I opened it, my cousin stood there. Daniel. His breath fogged in the cold, his coat too thin, his pride even thinner. Behind him, the hallway smelled of wet snow and desperation. "Celine," he said, voice low. "Can I come in?" I didn't move. I watched him shift from foot to foot, hands buried in pockets like a child caught stealing. His eyes darted past me into the warm glow of my apartment, where the scent of cinnamon tea lingered. "My business is falling apart," he admitted, finally meeting my eyes. "Suppliers won't give me credit. Customers, they don't come back. And the grant, the one I was supposed to get, it didn't happen. They said my numbers didn't hold up. I thought you could, maybe, tell me what I did wrong." There it was, the unspoken truth. He knew I understood the system. He knew I had power he lacked. And suddenly, the same cousin who had laughed as my name card lay folded beneath his plate was standing at my door, begging for scraps of my knowledge. I let the silence stretch until it cracked. Then I leaned against the frame, my voice calm, steady. "Funny. You told me once that I only shuffle papers. That I make no real money. That night, I believed you. That night, you all made me believe I didn't belong. So tell me, Daniel, why knock now?" His face flushed. He tried to swallow his pride, but it stuck in his throat. Because you're family, he whispered. Family. That word again, dropped like a weapon. I almost laughed. Almost. But instead, I simply shook my head. No, Daniel. Family is who makes room for you at the table. Remember that. And I closed the door, gently, deliberately, leaving him on the other side of the wood, surrounded by the echo of a silence he'd once forced on me. I leaned against the closed door, my heart steady, not racing. For once, I wasn't shaking from hurt. I wasn't begging for an explanation, or replaying their lies in my head. I was still. Outside, I heard Daniel's footsteps retreat down the stairwell. No shouting, no threats. Just silence, the same silence they had once wrapped around me like a shroud. I walked back to my window. Snow fell slow and heavy, blanketing the street below in a hush that felt almost merciful. Across the glass, I saw the reflection of my apartment. Warm lights, a small tree I'd decorated with thrift ornaments, the kitchen still smelling of gingerbread. My world was not grand, but it was mine, and it was enough. The following week, photos began to circulate again. My family at New Year's, their smiles thinner now, the table smaller, the laughter dimmer. My cousin's restaurant had shuttered for renovations, though everyone knew what that meant. My aunt's posts were filled with vague requests for prayers. But my life moved differently. The shelter's new kitchen opened with fanfare. Children painted thank you cards that now lined my office wall, a mural of bright colors declaring hope lives here. Volunteers embraced me, not because of blood, but because of choice, respect, and recognition. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think of that folded place card with my name hidden beneath a charger plate. It no longer stung. It glowed in my memory like a reminder. They tried to erase me, but all they did was sharpen me into someone they couldn't ignore. Revenge hadn't been loud. It hadn't needed to be. It had been quiet, precise, unfolding in the spaces where they thought I was weakest. I didn't need to sit at their table anymore. I had built my own. And those who sat with me now didn't laugh at my absence. They honored my presence. On New Year's Eve, as the city erupted in fireworks, I whispered into the night. They left me hungry. But hunger made me strong. And strength is something they will never taste. I raised my glass to no one but myself, and for the first time in years, I felt full.